What's up, guys, and welcome back to Beyond the Void Horror Podcast. My name is Alex, and today we're going to be doing our spoiler discussion, which has some of the Easter eggs and things for Season 3 of CREEPSHOW. Let's get back into it, guys. So first off, let me just say I have been extremely busy behind the scenes, so I apologize for anything being late. There have been some sicknesses in the family that have been very stressful, and I am trying my best to get work done and facilitate the needs of our family. And I just want to let you guys know that, so that if you're wondering why this video is coming up late, it's because of that. We've had our house as a launch pad for a lot of the family, for hospital visits and things like that. So I apologize. Just want to say thank you for stopping by. And if you know anyone that enjoys these kind of reviews, please share it with them. Moving forward, we got Season 3 of CREEPSHOW that just came out on Shudder in the same year that they did Season 2, which is a little weird. I was not expecting that, and it's almost like they did zero promotion for it. In some regards, I feel like they took all the money that they were going to use for Season 2 and they split it into 3 seasons, so they split it over 2 to give more bang for the buck. So we got 6 episodes this season that are going to be directed mostly by Greg Nicotero, who is the showrunner, the special effects guy, producer. This week with episode 1, they come out with 2 segments, of course, like they always do, Mums and Queen Bee. Now, if you are not used to this channel doing reviews sort of on these episodes, they are spoilerific, so you will be getting some stuff that if you have not seen the show, you might want to watch it first and then come back here and then let us discuss it about what we thought about these episodes. That seems to kind of be the growing trend for these sort of playlists that I have for the CREEPSHOW series. Highly encourage you to check it out on Shudder and then come back. After the intro, of course, of The Creep, and we get the whole song and dance and everything like that, they always show the, like, you know, the comic book, and then they kind of flip through the pages. And this time, I don't know if you guys noticed it, they have a list of different stories that we're going to get, and even a little line of like text and stuff about each of the episodes. This week, I saw under Mums, they were talking about Creepy number 88 and how the artwork for that done by somebody was really great. Well, I looked it up, and this is number 88 of Creepy magazine that came out in 1977. If you guys aren't familiar with that, Creepy used to put out a magazine that is like a comic book of different stories. It's like an anthology of different stories that wasn't considered to be a technical comic book by the Comic Book Authority, but it was a lot of horror stories with black and white pages. Later on, they went to color, of all the kind of stories that you would get in something like CREEPSHOW, EC Comics. CREEPSHOW is all kinds of nods to all of that. So this week, we have a story called Mums. This is the first segment of the CREEPSHOW episode 1. It is a story that is by Joe Hill from his book of stories called Full Throttle. And he actually had another story in there from the same book that was in Season 2 of CREEPSHOW called By the Silver Water of Lake Champlain, which was that creature one where they discover a creature that came out of the water. So this isn't his first rodeo on CREEPSHOW. This was also written by Greg Nicotero, the showrunner, as well as David J. Shaw, who is the writer of Critters 3 and 4. He also did Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3, Leatherface. And we get director Rusty Cundiff coming back to do another episode for this segment in particular, which he is the director of Fear of a Black Hat, which is a sort of mockumentary about NWA, but it's called NWH, which instead of NW attitudes, it's NW hats. Figure it out. So what happens in this story? So basically, this is a story about a young boy, his father, who is sort of like a revolutionary, sort of patriot, sort of right-wing conservative conspiracy theorist guy who is taken to action to do things behind the scenes, and his mother is trying to get him away because obviously there's some abuse there, and she does not want her child subjected to it, so she suggests the child and her go to visit Meemaw, her grandmother, great-grandmother, who was over 100 years of age. I'm not sure if that's true or not, but they want to go visit her. And as they're leaving, they run into the father, who is none too happy about her taking the son to go and get away from him. After a struggle and some sort of back and forth argument that they have, he's got friends behind him, like a buddy named Connor and this other girl named Beth, who are his friends and part of the revolution, which they get into later. The mom drops her luggage on the ground, and a bottle of liquor and a wad of money come out, which has been evidently planted on her by the father because he knew that she was trying to leave him in the height of his revolution. She has some words with him, calls him a two-bit terrorist, and he takes her away, and the boy never gets to see his mother again. Now, he does not know that his mother has been killed. Supposedly, we don't know exactly how it happened, but maybe she tried to jump out of the vehicle while it was running and she died, or they just straight up killed her. They never really explain. But they do show that Ethan Embry, who plays the father, Hank, and his buddy Connor are burying his mother in their garden. And she always had like a big garden because that was her thing. And she was going to be taking some seeds with her son, to go plant them in somewhere north. After they bury the mom in the backyard, the dad comes inside and is like, oh, she, really freaked out, and you don't understand, she's got a problem with alcohol, and she would have eventually just not chosen you over the alcohol, and you would have been left behind. You gotta understand that this is necessary, and she's gonna be gone for a long while. Meanwhile, she's dead in the garden. There's sort of a story with the Beth girl, who's the friend of Hank and Connor and the revolutionaries, and the kid sort of suspects something's up, and he goes through the luggage and finds the seeds, which are sharp, and they have prickers on them, and he bleeds on top of them, which is significant because when he goes to bury the seeds in the garden on top of his dead mother's grave, essentially, unknown grave, these flowers grow overnight and they have a hunger for blood. Somehow, this kid realizes this and goes and literally grabs the flower, causing it to bleed even more onto the soil. It's like these flowers grew so fast and there's something up, and he's kind of trying to deal with whether or not his mom's really coming back because he doesn't trust his dad. And obviously she's dead, but by the way, Ethan Embry's part in this role reminded me a lot of Masters of Horror, the very first episode that Don Coscarelli did. It was called Incident on and Off of a Mountain Road, which had that one about the girl who had a husband who was very controlling and made her be able to survive anything. And even though he was a piece of shit to her, she learned these techniques to survive, if you recall. It just kind of reminded me of the same role, only further into the future, because he's a little bit more southerner, or he's got a little bit more of an accent. But later that night, you see that the revolution is about to happen with the father and Connor talking at the table about blowing something up, because they're talking about chunks are going to be in outer space and whatnot. And they put down a Pale Horse book called The Pale Horse's Cookbook. I'm not really sure what that is. There is a book by Agatha Christie called The Pale Horse. I don't know that it relates to that. I think they're just kind of changing the name to kind of make it seem like the Anarchist Cookbook, which is, how to make bombs and tap phones and all this other shit from the 80s and 90s. So now what it could mean is there is a actual painting. The title of this painting is taken from the final book of the Bible, the Revelation of St. John the Divine, which has often been interpreted as a symbolic description of warfare called Death on a Pale Horse. And it, quote, says, "And I looked, and behold a pale horse, and his name that sat on him was Death. He followed with him, and the power was given unto them over the fourth part of the earth to kill the sword, and with hunger, and with death, and with the beasts of the earth." Revelation 6:8. So this very may well be what they were talking about. But Jack sees a pig in the middle of the night getting swallowed up by the plants, which wrap vines around it. He frees the pig and then realizes that there's something bad going on out there, and a face comes up out of the dirt, and it's his mom's face. She grabs his arm, cutting it, drinks the blood out of his arm, kisses him on the cheek, and then whispers in his ear something. And the next thing you know, you got Jack telling Beth to come out to the garden that he's done something bad, and she goes out and sees a skeleton. And when she turns around, Jack's like, bink, hits her in the face. She goes face down and gets eaten up by the plants, which is pretty interesting. And then the dad comes home, and I thought this little scene was really great because he's like, "I'm right here." And the dad's like, "What are you running, a spook show or something?" And then he's like, Dad, you gotta come with me. I gotta show you what I did. I did something wrong. And he goes out to the flower patch, into the garden, and his dad's like, what the hell? And the plants are moving, and he sees the girl laying face down, and he gets taken. He even tries to shoot his own son, but the plant pulls the gun down out of his hand or down to the ground, and then the kid smacks his dad in the face, and then he dies, leaving Jack in the truck to go up north to see Meemaw with 3 potted plants and the luggage that his mom and him were going to take to begin with. Revenge, 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 which is a common theme you'll see in all EC Comics, creepy horror stuff all the time anyway, and these comic books that Creepshow is sort of making an ode to. I liked this episode. It was, a little predictable, but, I mean, these are short stories, so you have to remember that they have to condense, trying to make you care about a character instantly while telling a big story and also giving you the goods as well. So what normally takes people about an hour and a half, they have to squeeze into 25 minutes or less. I think it was a good one. It wasn't great. I probably would give it like a 6. I definitely think that the first segment is going to definitely separate a few people who are a little touchy about political stuff in their horror, but it's always been in horror, guys. We've had political statements in all of horror. It's been there the whole time, whether you knew it or not. Next up, we've got Queen Bee, which is the second segment in the episode 1. And this one is about a group of kids, this 2 girls and 1 guy. There is Trinice, Deborah, and Carlos, who are sitting around talking about this famous girl named Regina, who is a famous pop star and has great music. Trinice has her earbuds in, listening to this over and over and again, and they decide that they're going to go to the hospital that her mother works at because her mother knows where this pop star is to have her baby, because this pop star is pregnant and they love her so much. Not only do they want to meet her, but they may even take photos of her and the baby to become rich. There's some back and forth between the 2 girls about, who's the biggest fan, which plays into later, which you find out. But this story, of course, gets out of hand when you find out why she's being pregnant and what is going on in this hospital. Now, this story was written by Eric Sandoval, which did Dead End Breakfast, which was in season 2 of Creepshow. And we also have Mike Rousselet, who wrote on this, who is from 5 Second Films, and he also did Dude Bro Massacre Party, Cyanide and Happiness, and stuff like that. And Greg Nicotero, who directs this piece. Of course, you know who he is. One of the things I noticed right off the bat is these kids are talking about this famous pop star, and they're smoking pot in their room, and their mother's at work as she works at a hospital. She's like a doctor or something, or a nurse. And the kid's like, hey, you shouldn't be smoking that. At least blow it out the window or before my mom hears it. And then she hears her mom outside the door, and they're like, oh, fuck. And they're like trying to blow it out, get it out. And the first thing her mom says is, smells like you guys are hungry in here, huh? And it's like, oh God, I've remembered those moments when I was younger. When you're like, oh fuck, am I gonna get caught? Or is she just being a weird parent? And you can't really know in this. It's like, does she know that they're smoking pot? We don't know. The mom suggests that they get a pizza in a nice way, whether she knows or not, I'm not sure. And the kids decide that they're going to go to the hospital instead because they got her mom's key card for the hospital. And they're going to go and check out and meet Regina where she's giving birth. Secretly. When they drive over, they hear on the radio that there is some of this actually secrecy behind where she's having the kid, and they're all happy that they know. And when they show up, they say what the name of the hospital is, which this is obviously an Easter egg. It is Haddonfield Myers Hospital, which if you are a fan of Halloween, you know, which is the place where fucking Halloween takes place. And Michael Myers is the fucking monster, the shape. So there's that nod, if you didn't catch that. The kids sneak in with a selfie stick by basically taking a picture facing down where the camera is and then holding it up in front of the camera to confuse them, which is kind of, it would never work that way. The kids sneak in, they go up the fire escape, and they get stopped by a security guard who basically falls down backwards because they get into a scuffle about them being in the building, and we think he dies. We don't really know. Although we do get to see him later. The kids are like, I'm not waiting around to see if he's dead. I'm just gonna fucking bounce out of here. Which, I mean, if you're a kid, you're probably freaking out about that anyway, because you're like, I'm fucked. I'm like really fucked right now. On the floor that they get to where they find out where Regina is, all the lights are off. Everything seems a little weird. Like, it doesn't seem like a regular hospital. There are nurses walking around with dead bodies. When Trinice knocks over a magazine rack or some sort of pamphlet brochure rack, she, of course, alerts this nurse who turns around and has green eye. She's like, okay, this is not normal. She thinks that the green-eyed nurse sees her, but when they walk back, they just go to adjust the temperature on the wall, which was like, you know, oh my God, what the fuck? And then goes on about its business like it didn't even see her. Now, the eyes thing, I don't know. So I've heard some people complain about that. They're like, what kind of cheap, you know, why would you have cheap eyes? I mean, that's kind of the point, you know? That's like an 80s thing. They're just trying to make it seem like they have green glowing eyes. It reminded me of Dead Pit from like the 80s, that movie where the cover of the VHS where you had the glowing eyes on it. That, I don't know, it just reminds me of that for some reason, even though the movie didn't really have that. I think they even had red glowing eyes in the movie, but it still reminds me of that VHS cover, so kudos. But they find out where Regina is, the pop star. She's on a table getting an epidural, and it's not an epidural. They think it's hurting her because her back starts to swell up, and then all of a sudden, a fucking claw comes out of her eye, and then the other eye. And this is where I laughed, because Carlos goes, is that supposed to happen? Like, really? Like, one thing you guys gotta understand is that this is a campy show. It's supposed to be camp, okay? In the 80s and 90s, camp was really huge. It is not something that we see in the mainstream that often anymore, because it's like the late 90s pushed for realism. Like, Batman's got to be real. We got to make him more real, not like the comic books. And nowadays we're kind of going back to that style as, you know, styles sort of retrace upon ground that they've been before. But this is when the fucking claws come fully out and the creature is revealed. It's this fucking giant insect looking thing with a big old stinger on the top, and its head is like got these weird things hanging out of its head, which I thought was kind of like a nod to The Thing, because there is a couple of moments in the movie which I just rewatched on 4K, which looks beautiful, by the way, and that there's a couple times where the monster stands up like that, and I kind of feel like they were kind of making a nod there. I mean, first of all, they were on a hospital bed. The head of the guy who was getting the paddles on the chest, his head falls off and turns into a spider. Maybe not. But the kid takes a picture while this creature's like standing up full on, and it alerts all the other nurses, which they get chased by them. They get blocked to go out the elevators, and then of course they finally get away from them by attacking the nurses. I think one of them gets hit in the head and the other one gets shocked with the paddles while choking one of the girls. Electricity travels through the body, by the way, so that girl would have probably been shocked almost to death if not, you know. So, but whatever, it's a show. It doesn't have to make sense 100%. They basically saves the girl's life. They get into the elevator. They're ready to leave. And Trinice is like, hey, I'm going to take this photo and show it to the world so we know that she's a monster. And the other girl's like, I thought you said you were a fan of Regina. Clearly, if you're going to rat her out, you're second best. And she's like, what are you talking about? She's a fucking monster. And she's like, she hasn't even put out her new album yet. Let her put her new album first. And she's like, what? What's going on? They just killed my friend and what the hell? And so then she gets knocked out and taken to the creature's lair where she's giving birth to all these slugs, like these larva fucking creatures with buttholes on their face, and eventually sticks it on the girl as the girl wants to be the best fan of the girl and willingly lets her take over her mind. C'est la vie. She's the best fan. And she proved it. This one was a little bit on the not my particular taste style, but I do appreciate the creature, and seeing that was really cool. Like the whole it busting out of Regina. And maybe this has some sort of tale about who we idolize and maybe how as a society nowadays we do not question some of these people. If we're in sort of an idolization stage with these people, they're not everything that they say they are, and they could be taking over the world and destroying it, and we would still support them, or certain types of people might. I don't know. But I would say for this whole episode, I'd say it's about a 6, maybe a 5.5 at least. Some people are saying it's the worst thing they've ever seen. I disagree. And for those of you who enjoy these sort of specific episodes that are a story each episode for 20 minutes or so. You know, they're not long episodic stories like we normally get. And I think that's why something like American Horror Stories is not doing as well as the American Horror Story seasons, because they started to do American Horror Stories, individual stories for each one, and it has not really done that well. Some of the stories are good, some of them aren't. The original movie of Creepshow was made on $8 million for 3 segments. That was a lot of money. I don't think this show has gotten that much money, but maybe it's just not meant for certain people. I enjoy it still. I'm still looking forward to this season. Shout out in the comments what you think about this season so far. Do you think they should have come out stronger? Just let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. Next week, we'll have episode 2, but thanks for coming by, guys. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. And as always, long live the void.